I spent the majority of that night just taking manure out of the Chester box pet and putting it back in, finding joy out of plopping manure into somebody's mouth. After that night of fun laughter and antics, I headed out again, continuing my exploration, only to immediately find more spider nests. That would explain how I got attacked so badly last night. I had to step into the territory a little bit, and I saw more spiders coming out to probably get me, so I kept running. Got my walking stick out and just bolted straight out of there, almost running into another nest. I figured this is probably not a good place for me to be, seeing as it was filled with spiders and ugly pig things. So, I figured I would continue on my exploration and try to find a place a bit more pleasant. However, I found a gravestone over there and found the strange need to dig it up. So I crafted a shovel and got to work doing that. Felt like I just made a horrible moral decision and I felt really bad for doing it, but I found a red gem in there. Didn't find any dead bodies or anything, so I'd presumed the red gem had died and then he just put it in underground. I decided to leave some flowers under their grave. However, in picking the flower, I kind of mangled all the petals, so it was a little ugly. So I figured I probably shouldn't bother. So I picked up the petals and headed off on my way again. Heading down south again, I picked up the occasional stick and everything, occasionally collecting supplies, when I found another grave. Found the other urge to pick it up, and I found a bathtub plug. I have no idea why that was buried under a grave, and nor what I would do with it, considering I had no bath. But, you know, I guess it's something. I mean, granted, I don't have a bathtub, nor do I know how to make one, and actually I haven't bathed since I got here, which is now 11 days straight. Now, going 11 days straight without bathing is no new concept for me, but I figured I'd point it out to you guys since we're on the topic of bathtubs. I got the idea to head to the Pig King, maybe show him the bathtub plug. I figured since it was probably their people's graves, I figured he'd know what it was about and possibly explain everything to me. Granted, I don't think he could explain anything in English, since he's a pig, but I figured it was worth a shot. I headed over to his throne, taking one last look at the bathtub plug before I gave it to him to look at. He just kind of squealed in delight and threw 8 pieces of gold at me. Now, I don't know about you, but 8 pieces of gold for a bathtub plug is a pretty good deal to me, because I figure gold is something I could actually use, whereas the plug, not so much. I reached the fork in the road in the village and decided to head the way that I haven't gone yet, figuring that there would probably be something a bit more interesting down that way, hopefully. But as of right now, all I could find is more death and more dirt, but I didn't find any spiders, so that was nice. Also, though, oh, I guess I spoke too soon, as I soon found 2 spider nests next to a berry bush. Picked the berries and then headed on my way, not wanting to deal with any more spiders for a little while until my spider bites have healed. I looked at my map deciding where to go next and then just headed on my way, figuring I'd explore in this general area before I headed for home, probably going to camp out here for the night. I headed along the coastline, figuring that would probably be a safe way of giving me a general idea of the shape of the lay of the land. That, and it would just help me with exploring. So I picked up a piece of grass and continued on my way, heading towards the east, walking past lots of flowers and trees and just some nice pretty nature, unlike the dead kind of brown grass that I was just been walking in. Gathered a couple more saplings, debating bringing some more home for my farm, but I figured I didn't really need that. I encountered another brown dirt landscape and headed into it, figuring why not. There were flowers and mushrooms and a lot of trees. Also some more graves. I decided to dig up another one. This was starting to get kind of fun. And I found another red gem. Figured I could probably find some use for those things. Maybe jewelry or something, I don't know. I'm no gemologist, I'm just a scientist. So, after that, I decided to put manure inside and out of Chester again, plopping it into his mouth, because the day had gotten a little bit dry and I felt like doing it. Continued along, passing by a little rocky outcrop and following the coast until I reached the basic end of it. Keep following along the landscape just to see what I could see. The day was getting kind of late and I was also starting to get a little bit hungry. So I figured I'd probably have to stop to make camp for the night eventually. However, I still had plenty of time to worry about that. I walked past another spider's nest. I was really starting to get annoyed by these things. There were way too many of these out in the world. I also found another berry bush, and I decided I'd take this one with me. So I figured this one's so far away from home, there's no way that I'm going to bother coming back to it. So I gave it to Chester and continued on my way. At that point, I found the path that was leading somewhere. I figured I would probably follow this path until it got too dark for me to continue walking, and then I would set up camp for the night. So I headed down this path. It was a nice straight shot for most of the while, and it was quite nice, just spending a nice cool evening walking alone in the forest, possibly with someone out to murder me, hiding in the trees. But I wasn't too worried about that. You're not supposed to worry about that kind of thing. It'll drive you crazy. Continuing along the path, I began to realize that there was basically nothing here, so I took out my walking stick and began to rush onward. Walking past another spider's nest on the side of the road, I headed onward, walking past some more beefaloes, and continuing on to the next biome. Found myself in that grassy biome again, feeling it was a bit more pleasant than anything I'd been in today. Then entered another dirt biome, followed by another grass biome. That's when I found this. It was a strange plant thing called a mandrake. I decided to pick it, and I regret that instantly, because all of a sudden it came to life and just started squeaking at me, and whenever I tried to approach it to stop it, it would just move away. And when I tried to move away from it, it would follow me, and then continue squeaking at me. Immediately it was getting on my nerves, and I tried to kill it with the spear, but I somehow could not do it. So then I just tried to run from the thing, hoping that maybe it would get bored of me and then leave. However, I found that that was not the case, and also it was beginning to get dark, so I had to make camp despite him being there. I headed up a little bit, and then found a place to make my campfire. He just sat there, jumping up and down, squeaking at me the entire time as I made the fire. I tried to chase him away, but he would just not stop following me. Tried leading him into the fire, thinking maybe that would work, but it didn't. Ran around the campfire, just trying to ignore him as best as I could, but he was annoying the crap out of me. I guess I'd have to spend the whole night listening to him squeaking like that. After circling the fire a few more times, I realized I was getting hungry, so I ate my meatballs and cooked up a couple of berries, and had those for dessert. After that, I stared into the fire, just trying my best to ignore him. However, I could see him out of the corner of my eye, just jumping up and down, flapping his leaves around, squeaking at me annoyingly. I then looked away from him, just trying to ignore him the best I could. He's not there. He's not there. He's not there. Squeaking at me non-stop, consistently. My fire began to die out, and I began to worry whether or not it would be able to survive till sunrise, but it did. The mandrake went back into the ground, but I wasn't having that. I picked him up, and then immediately strangled him to death. I then carried his corpse with me in my backpack, not sure what I'd do with him, but I was just happy that he was dead now, and that he would no longer be bothering me. I headed out to the west, grabbing a couple flowers, figuring I could probably use them as fertilizer for the berry bushes that I intended on planting. However, at this point I kind of realized that my box friend wasn't following me anymore. I figured maybe he had run away already and he didn't like me or something. He probably was mad that I kept shoving manure down his throat. I mean, I could understand that. So, continuing on my own, I passed through some uncharted territory full of carrots and flowers and trees and happiness. But then I found a few berry bushes that I had been to before. I realized I was now heading in towards home territory. I followed along the path when I found a really creepy thing. It was a plant made out of eyeballs. It's quite disgusting. And in the middle there was some bulb there, which I presumed to be the heart of the plant. Wasn't sure how to get there, so I walked up to it and poked it with my walking stick, and it bit me. So I figured it was time to be serious. I brought my spear out and I started slashing away at these things. They died pretty easily, and I made it to the core pretty fast. I then started stabbing at the bulb just to see what I could find. With a few hits, it all died, and I found this bulb seed thing, as well as this strange piece of meat. I picked up the bulb and the strange meat. It's called leafy meat, and it made me think of vegetarians, and whether or not they'd be allowed to eat something like this. I'd presume they would be, but you never know. Not that that was my problem or anything. I was gonna eat it. Maybe. I mean, it looked quite disgusting. I presumed it would just be like eating a salad, but with the texture of meat. Which, all in all, actually did not sound very pleasant at all. But anyways, I eventually reached home again. I was quite happy to arrive there. I went to my crock pot and tried to see if I could cook that seed thing, but I couldn't. So instead I shoved some berries in the crock pot with the other leftovers that I had before. And then went to check on the farm. Began to harvest, but then I realized I had no inventory space for anything. So I walked back holding this carrot in my hands, just kind of wondering what I was going to do with it. I decided I'd just put the gold in the chest. And that way I had the inventory space for it, until I harvested the meatballs. Then I began shoving more things into the crock pot, figuring I might as well use up all these ingredients that I had collected on my journeys. I then continued to harvest, but then realized I also once again had no inventory space for what I was trying to do. I walked around confused for a while, unsure what to do, and then I remembered I had the berry bush, so I decided I'd plant that. I set it down into the ground right next to my stick collection, but a little closer to the base. It was all brown and withered and probably needed to be fertilized. I figured I could probably use those flower petals as fertilizer, so I'd probably just wait for those to go bad and then shove those around the berry bush. I put another mushroom into the crock pot and then cooked up a piece of that monster meat, shoving that in there as well. Followed by 2 things of berries, and then I set it to cook. I also cooked up that piece of leafy meat and let it sit in my inventory for a while because it was really disgusting looking. I didn't really want to touch it right now, but I probably would later. I headed back northwest to see if I could see Colonel again. It's been a while since we've hung out, and I figured we could get reconnected and I could touch his manure again. I headed up and grabbed a couple more pieces, figuring I could just use that for the farm. And that's when I realized that that box creature thing had my manure as well, which was a little disappointing, seeing as I'd have to get him back in order to get all that stuff back. But I wasn't too worried about that. I'm sure I'd be able to get to him with no problems. I'd just have to figure out what happened to it. So I used the magical manure to make myself another carrot and brought that back with me to the base. I emptied out the meatballs from the crock pot, now having 2 servings of meatballs on me. I tried to put the leafy meat in the crock pot, but it wouldn't go in, so I just ate it as it is. It was okay. Not very delicious, but it was okay. Not something I'd really want to eat again, but I would if I had to. So I then put in a carrot, 2 berries, and another cooked monster meat into the crock pot, figuring I'd get more meatballs. I then decided to leave the petals on the ground, figuring they'd rot faster. And then I realized that they might get eaten by birds out there, and I didn't want that. So I left them beside the gnome god, figuring he'd protect them from all the evil birds. At that point, evening was setting, and the day was ending. I headed to my chest to see what I could store in there, and decided that I would leave my red gems and my mandrake thing corpse in there. Therefore giving me a little bit more inventory space and such. I also left the fleshy bulb in there, seeing as I didn't really have any use for that thing as of yet. I then checked my science machines and alchemy engine, seeing if they would give me any inspiration for anything, but they didn't. There was nothing I really wanted to make at this point. I searched around the map, seeing where I'd want to go next. I'd probably head southeast, and then I realized that that was where my box thing was. Apparently the map was going to tell me that. I have no idea how it did that, but I didn't complain too much. So that's probably the direction I'd be heading in tomorrow, just to explore a bit more as well as get him back, so I could have my manure and a couple of my other things. I believe he had some silk with him. I put a pumpkin into a crock pot and just left it there, figuring I'd add more ingredients later. And then I chased a crow away from the petals, seeing his gnome god was probably not exactly doing the best job. And then put the mandrake into the chest like I said it would earlier, after a small debate as to whether or not I should cook his corpse and eat him. I didn't really think that was a good idea, and I figured I could use his corpse for something. I then took another look through my ideas of what I could make, and I realized I didn't really have anything that I really had any desire to create at the moment.